I'm very delighted to introduce the next group of painters. They're going to be painting still lifes from their studios. We're going to peek over the shoulders of Kathy Anderson, Quang Ho, Daniel Keys, Suchitra Bhosle, who also goes by Suchi, Tina Garrett, and of course, our beloved Nancy Guzik.
So I do this a lot. I love painting people and still life. So I'll show you, I'm gonna try to get her just the block in and then show you how I'll put this in. And mine is, I have dark values and light values, and I look forward to showing you how I'll be doing that.
Hi, I'm Kathy Anderson. I was one of the original Putney painters. I think I came in around the third year, which was, I had no idea what this group was. I actually met Richard. He raised his girls for at one point in a little town called Sherman, Connecticut, where I used to do an outdoor art show. And one time, I should back up for a second. The first time I discovered Richard was my girlfriend had a gallery, and I was flipping through these books that had these prints in them, and his work, of course, just jumped off the pages to me. But skip a few years, I came back to this little town to pick up my paintings after the art show, and the lady said to me, "Oh my God, guess who bought your painting?" And it was Richard. I couldn't believe it. So that's how I met him. He bought one of my paintings, and then he told me about this. I heard him talking about this group of people that he painted with up in Vermont, and he invited, I said, "Oh, could I join that group? Could I take a class?" I thought it was a workshop. "Can I sign up for the class?" And he said, "Oh, no, we just a group of people." And he invited me to go up there, and it was a 2.5-hour drive. And I walked in, and just like the beginning of the Putney Painter film, that's what hit me, seeing all of these people. They were painting a model from life. I didn't know anything about painting models from life at that point. And then I thought to myself, 2.5 hours. Well, it's a long way to drive to just go up to paint for a day. And then I did it for 21 years, of course, as anybody would. But well, that's my introduction. So.
Hi guys, I would try really hard not to cry because the video is just like overwhelming, and I feel so privileged to be here. My name is Tina Garrett. I'm Kansas City, Missouri based artist. I first met Richard and Nancy in September of 2012, so almost exactly 10 years ago. Is that right? Can that be right? And I had been in a class with Romel de la Torre, and he and Jerry Salinas just spoke so highly of Richard. They said that I would be able to, go to the bookstore and buy Alla Prima and go home and do the color charts, and everything will start to make sense, because that was my very first oil painting class. And I had been a graphic designer and an illustrator for the bulk of my career. And the publishing industry that I worked for just went belly up essentially. And I had about a year where I had to figure out how to reinvent myself and make a living again. And I didn't know this world of fine art even existed. So once I knew who Richard was, I wanted to, as everyone else I'm sure has said, wanted to learn from him, but of course he wasn't teaching anymore, but he was traveling around and taking his book out for signings. And he came to Wichita to unveil his painting of Sir Walter Scott's castle, Abbotsford House. And that was the day I saw Daniel Keys in person, and I got to hug and meet Nancy. You didn't get to really officially meet me, Daniel, but I knew who you were. And I stalked you a little.
I remember that event.
It was so great because all of Richard's work was hanging on the walls there, and
Right.
they were the same paintings that are in Alla Prima. So I was just flipping out because you could see even more detail. This was my copy of Alla Prima at the time, was the original one. So it had really kind of murkier prints, because the new Alla Prima 2 it's like you're looking at the real paintings. You can see the little tiny marks and the details. So I took my book around and just compared every one that was in real life to my book, and Richard signed my book. And the very first words Richard ever spoke to me were, "Oh, I want to paint you. You are a walking work of art."
Oh.
And my mom was taking pictures of me, and like the succession of the pictures of as I get closer to him, kind of kneel down next to him, my face gets redder and redder and redder. And every single thing that I thought to ask him just flew out of my mind. And I just stuttered as he signed my book.
Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely perfectly.
Okay. How do I look, Simi?
You know, nice shorts. That's what I just wanted to say.
I actually have my Liam is in the studio with me today. My name is Quang Ho. I'm a Denver artist and a Pennsylvania artist. We drove all the way into Pennsylvania for 10 hours yesterday and got here at 2 a.m. And had a setup to test this to make sure my audio is good. So it's all working. Well, I have to tell you something funny. Years after I met him for the first time and we got to paint together in Denver, in Colorado, and we were sitting together with a bunch of people, and he started telling his story, straight-faced. He says, Quang Ho came over here. He told me that he came over, he swam across the ocean and came to America, and he didn't know any English. And he when he landed, he said the first words out of his mouth was, Richard Schmid. He said, he swam all the way across the ocean to go learn how to paint with Richard Schmid. And he's telling me this great, I'm like, oh my goodness, where did he come up with this? But it was so funny. And I didn't see that one coming at all. And then he just telling that. So he's been telling that story, Nancy will remember. And I just endeared him to me in a big way. Because I've always known Richard, you know, as a friend, and he's, you know, you admire him so much. You just watch him paint and all. And then I didn't know he had this really funny, devilish side to him like that. It just cracked me up. So, but I first met him when I graduated high school in 1982, and I had won the National Scholastic Art Award. I don't know if you know what that is. And it was sponsored by the Artists of America, the Rotary show that was going on in Denver for a long time. And believe it or not, before that time, I had never seen an original oil painting. I used to go to nobody told me, I just got off the boat. So I used to go to the public library and devoured the art books. I've never seen anything so wonderful. And at that dinner, they invited me to come say a word of thank you for getting the scholarship. And they started roll calling the names of the artists, and Richard Schmid, you know, David LaFell, Ramon Kelly, you know, I mean, the big giant names that I used to go to the library and borrow the books. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, who are I hadn't seen the show at that point. The next morning I got to see the Artists of America show and got to officially meet Richard and David LaFell and I was 18, and I was like a stamp, you know. It was amazing to see these paintings in person. And so over the years, to become friends with Richard and Nancy and David LaFell, and how beautiful, not only their paintings, I think on an aesthetic beauty level, I think Richard has painted some of the most beautiful paintings in history, you know. They're beautiful down to the last piece of color. But as we all can attest, they're so generous he was so generous with his time and any information. Anytime he asked a question, he was there to answer it. And he only had the kindest thing to say. I've sat in front of some of his critiques, and he was so kind and was always so wonderful to point out just the most positive things and then build on that, which is wonderful. I mean, speaking for myself, I've learned more from watching Richard paint than anything else. And, you know, because I didn't have the fortune of studying with him the way that Dan Gerhardt's, and some of you were able to paint with him on a regular basis, you know. But I could learn so much just with watching his patience and the deliberateness of his strokes, and his color is unmatched. I've tried to have that same sense of color. I never can achieve it. He has beautiful eyes, so for those things, and his composition when they're on is like a piece of classical music to me. That every piece, the whole thing is integrated, but individually, every brushstroke stands on its own, but it comes together like this crescendo, and it's very difficult to do and very hard to talk about. But he does it. I'll pass it on to the next artist. Oh, I just want to show you my setup. Okay, so I went out today. I just arrived in Pennsylvania and drove to my friend's house. He had some mushrooms that he found to give me, and he had a pear tree. And I got so excited because I wanted to paint the still life today. And I love painting fruit and things right off the garden. So I snipped a few branches, and now I am painting them from life, which is really wonderful. And I can see on the screen, it's way overexposed. In fact, the white background in the back is actually in shadow, and when I'm standing there, it's much darker, kind of like this. But I think my camera is a little blown out. I hope you can see it okay. But that's what I am painting. It's a little not a vignette, but a little portrait of a pear branch with an accented dark bottle for contrast.
Are you going to sneak Liam's feet in the background?
Well, can you see it?
Maybe.
Where's that boy? There he is. There he is. He's lying on the ground.
Look at him. He's so sweet. He's so
I really
well-behaved.
should just be painting him. He's lying pretty still right now.
Great. So I'm just thrilled to be here today with everybody, and so happy that Nancy wanted to include me. I know that I didn't actually study with Richard, but his influence really has been with me for my entire learning artistic life. When I was in Oklahoma, my first teacher was Richard Getz. And so he was the first one who told me about Richard Schmid. And so as a lot of you guys probably know, Richard's main gallery was Talisman Gallery in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. So lucky me, my friend Dennis Parker and I would go over there and spend like entire days, you know, just studying Richard's work. So it was a big part of my development, as well as Richard would have these home shows in these rich people's homes in Oklahoma City, and I went to all of those as well. And if he had a show in Bartlesville, I went to that too. So I was very much a big fan at the time. In fact, so much so that Jody Kerberger noticed how in love we were with Richard's work, and so she gave us something that was really only supposed to be for collectors, but it was a lithograph that Richard had done. And anyway, if you can see a young boy, it's just fabulous. So I have, of course, kept that and framed it, and it hangs in our home now. So, and of course, a lot of you know the person that I did end up studying with was David LaFell. And so they were also very, very good friends. And so I just, you know, grew up artistically hearing about Richard and about, you know, different stories of Richard in the Washington Square Outdoor Show, and how he was the wunderkind of the time and winning all the awards. And anyway, so I feel like Richard's been a part of my life, but I know not as intimately as a lot of you. So, but later in life, what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. But later in life, Nancy and Richard certainly were very, very kind to me. And I somehow ended up teaching at Penelope's place up there at the barn, and staying afterwards and painting with them at the Putney Painters. So it was very sweet. And it's how I met a lot of people that I love, including Kathy Anderson and Stephanie Birdsall and Carol Arnold and Lori, and anyway, who Nancy is painting right now, and of course Nancy. Anyway, so that's my history with it, with Richard, which really goes back to the beginning of when I was painting. And so I can show you what I'm going to be painting.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Which is we still have some grapes, that are still alive on the vine. So I really was dying to paint them. So, and one thing that it kind of reminds me of Richard is that when he painted still life or leaves or anything, you could see how much he really was trying to capture the character of that particular leaf or flower. And that always made a huge impression on me. And one of the times that I went up to paint with Putney Painters, it was, we were painting landscape and flowers were abundant, and we painted flowers. So anyway, it reminded me so much of Richard.
And Sherrie, can you say one thing? Your lighting, I always wanted to know your lighting, those nice dark walls, and you're working from a big north light window. I just thought everyone would like to know that. Is that right? That beautiful light?
Yeah, we have some clouds today, and that's when it's really, really good, but I can see we're getting a lot of blue sky now coming in. But I have a north window where the whole wall is slanted. So the light actually is coming from on top.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's slanted by about 10 degrees, I think 10 degrees. And it's the studio is slightly oriented to the northeast, so that we, in the evening, we still have a lot of light and we don't get the sun coming in. Anyway, and I'm working in oil and working with hog's hair bristles and a 2, a 4, and a 6 filberts. And I'm really excited to be here with all these people that I adore and love, and Quang Ho as well.
Okay, I'm going to go next to Daniel, who has almost finished his painting by the looks of it. This is unbelievable. We haven't even introduced you yet. What are you doing?
Nancy said I could paint.
I know, but you could have left some for us to see.
Yeah, Daniel, can you explain how you started? That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Nancy, for including me in this amazing experience. I'm touched by everyone's stories, and it's wonderful. I didn't meet you and Richard until 2009 or 10, and so I know it was sort of the latter decade, but I love hearing all of the stories from before that and then up until now. It's amazing, and I'm so grateful, so thank you. So yeah, I'm not a very good student, I guess. I feel like I used to be, but so everyone's painting from life and probably doing really, really amazing things. I just got through a workshop and a show, one-man exhibition, which Quang was talking about. So I'm a little sleep deprived, and so I am painting from photo reference.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but how can you say you're sleep deprived when we've just gone for 24 hours in honor?
Yeah, well, you understand, Simi, so you of all people can relate. I don't know how you're doing it, Simi. I'm gonna talk to you later about how you're doing that. Anyway, So I'm painting from photo reference, which I normally paint from life. I strongly advocate painting from life. And in fact, in my beginning, more developmental years, I only painted from life, and I never even would consider looking at a photo. And I'm super glad that I did, because I feel like that's where I developed my ability to see and observe. And so now when I do look at a photo, I can fill in the gaps that an inferior thing like a camera sees. So anyway, that's bad enough, but to make it worse, I am not only painting from photo reference, but I printed out the photo, which is like, one of the worst ways of doing it, as opposed to looking at a monitor or a screen where you get much better light and things like that. But my computer crashed, so I only have my phone, which allows you to view me, and so I had to print these out. But I have my camera on a tripod, so I'm actually going to lift this whole tripod, and hopefully you can see my reference, which is a couple of different things, and I've manipulated it on Photoshop computer software. And so here's my block in. It's kind of just simple right now. Not a lot of detail or anything like that yet. But I remember, I think the thing that stands out to me, one of the things that stands out the most about what Richard taught us, and you see it in the books and in any of his lectures or any of his one-on-one kinds of times that I was able to have with him. He talked about the importance of a sound, what he called a sound start, meaning where you take those first initial moments, putting down color and value and that sort of thing, all meant to bring you to that end that you envisioned from the beginning. And so you put as much thought and care into those beginning brushstrokes as you do the final kind of climactic end, and you'll set yourself up for success.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. My name is Taryn Parsons from just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, Spring Hill. And just wanted to say, first of all, thank you, Simi and Nancy and all involved in putting this on. Just really enjoyed this over the last couple of days. It's just been a pleasure to tune in, pleasure to hear all the stories. And specifically, I wanted to just take a second, and then I'll leave the floor, but just take a second to say thank you to Nancy. Man, so many years ago, was it 2010 maybe, we met at Weekend with the Masters, and met, of course, many of the people on this event right now. And you were so kind, you and Richard were so kind to critique paintings and to just spend time in discussion, and then of course extra hospitality, inviting myself and Ryan and others up to paint, and of course the rest is history there. But I just wanted to say thank you for that. I just think back about that so often, and just so grateful for that. Grateful not only to you for that hospitality, but the chance to meet so many other great people through it, Daniel and Michelle and so many others. And I did want to show just from that time. I can't see myself here, so hopefully I get the view okay. But if you can see that is a painting from Nancy's studio. You can tell it's from Nancy's studio because it has a figure and a still life. So that was such a joy. It was great. That was painting with Daniel and Michelle and Richard and you. That was just, what a wonderful time. And Ryan was there as well. And then the next day we painted at Putney, and we just grabbed some apples from the captain's orchard there. And while this painting, might be ordinary to some, but to me it means a whole lot, because there are just a couple strokes on here that are Richard's. He came along, gave me a wonderful critique, was not afraid, as many said, to kind of chew it up and spit it out and make me better for it. And then offered not only just some good critique, but when he said, "May I?" and he reached for my breast, I went, "Absolutely, go ahead." I was so pumped. So that painting is staying here forever, and I'm just so joy to have that opportunity. And thank you to your hospitality, and once again for putting this on. It's been such a joy to be here.
Well, it was what that's who he was. He was just so generous like that. And you and your bunch of artists were just a delight to come across. And that's what this is all about for all of us. And we're doing that, you know. I know Sherry's online with David LaFell, and you know, we're just all sharing Daniel's, you know, all these artists here, Sushi and Tina and Kathy and Quang Ho, we're all, you know, sharing that. And like said before, there's room for everybody. And your paintings are beautiful too. And I remember, didn't you help with one of these DVDs with Kristen?
Yes.
Yes, so
yes,
that beautiful one, we were all crying, painting people in the Grand Manner. Was that the one? Yes. And
yeah.
that one was just breathtaking, and just caught so much of that. So isn't that interesting? You helped us back, and you helped Richard back. And
I have a question for all of you that I know we all need to hear. So if we go round as Kathy, Suchi, Tina, then Nance, then Quang, Daniel, and Sherry, and I'm going to leave you to it for 5 minutes. The question is, Richard was so generous to pass on his knowledge. How has this influenced you guys to make sure his legacy continues?
Okay. Well, first of all, I drag his books, unfortunately not when I fly, but all three of his, I have the landscape, the still life, and of course Alla Prima too right now. I bring them up, for example, my last workshop in Landgrove, and I have them open, and I, throughout the entire class, I say, if you have a question, don't ask me, because I probably don't know the answer, so just go look in Richard's book. But I'm only kidding, I do know some answers. But I go back and forth, walking, look, see, look how he did it. Look at this, you're telling me you can't look, you know? So basically, that's it, just taking his books everywhere, if I can.
I think, you know, so going back to the background, that I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with Richard at all, you know, through a one-on-one. But the fact that I had that Alla Prima book, and, you know, I read it to, you know, literally threads, and understood what I could at the time, and like, you know, revisit, and somehow something would click again more differently and all of that. But, you know, I think for me, it's really the seed that he sowed in me, like, which is basically the being inspired, being happy about what moves you, and really going after that. I think that just somehow is such a great philosophy for passing down and letting people know, because I feel like, you know, good mentors or good teachers, they really add to you by not making copies of themselves in you, but they give you the wisdom to explore your own ingenuity, right? So your own inner, you know, genius, so to speak. So I think he did that to me without me having that complete influence of having learned with him or studied under him.
As I said, I didn't take any lessons from Richard other than what I learned in Alla Prima and the one-time painting together. But I feel like I took lessons with Richard because I took lessons with every painter I could get a hold of that was heavily influenced or directly taught by him. And I can't express how much I owe to Daniel and Michelle and Romel and Kathy and Casey Baugh. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm probably going to end up forgetting somebody, because I sought you guys out because Richard had taught you, and you didn't fail him when you opened the vest and told me all your secrets, and didn't, you know, like, you didn't say, oh, I'm not going to show you how to do this or anything else. Every one of the teachers that I have learned from have wanted to revel in my success as much as their own. And I know that that came from Richard. And that's my big takeaway, is I feel so beholden to that legacy to share everything I can.
Even though I didn't get to directly learn from Richard, like I said, I indirectly learned from him. And in a sense, you can't help it but to be passing on his legacy, his strength, because we've all learned from him one way or the other, really. I can't help it. Even now, as I'm doing this still life, I'm not thinking about doing it like Richard, but I can see certain things, little influences, little brushstroke here and there, little play of the edge that I may not have done if I hadn't watched him do a demonstration a long time ago. You know what I mean? And so it lives on whether I know it, I'm conscious of it or not. When I teach a workshop, I will teach and explain why Richard is so brilliant with his structure and his design. And I think he is so brilliant to keep people on the idea of just stay with really good drawing, good values. And I painted with him one time, and he kind of looked at my palette knife and like, without saying, you're doing a horrible job taking care of your palette knife. He said he has a palette knife that he's had for 20, 30 years, and is as sharp and as beautiful as always. And mine was caked with paint, and it was bent. I'm like, oh, I see. But so just he has this beautiful way of being, always teaching without being too hard on you, and I love that about Richard.
I think like what Quang said, and what Tina said too, just being so grateful for how willing Richard and all of the others are to share just whatever he knew and whatever they know now. I think that's what sets our part of the art world, if you look at the art world as a whole, what sets this sector of it apart, I think, is that willingness to share. No one is keeping all of these secrets to themselves and on purpose, sabotaging someone else. And I think part of that is because the work that you have to put in order for it to be successful, anyone that wants the same effect, they have to put in that work. It's not their trick that's holding the painting together. It's not some sort of formula or trick. It's really just this knowledge of how to paint and how to see. And so I think that we're all, because of that gratitude and because of how willing he was to share with us, I think just naturally we want to continue that. And so whether it's through teaching workshops or just having conversations with other artists and giving them whatever he gave us in word or in demonstration, I think it can't help but continue and perpetuate.
That made the biggest impression on me. A couple of things about Richard. It was his natural aesthetic. And so everybody has been saying it, especially Suchitra, about saying everything I want to say.
That's so funny, Sherrie.
But he had such a natural aesthetic, and he also made every brushstroke count. And I think that those are two things that really have made such a huge impression on me from Richard's work. I mean, I remember when I was an art student and studying his drawings. I remember this one in particular. It was a woman on a park bench, and it was just marveling at how few brushstrokes he had used in a sepia tone drawing to make it come alive. And yet everything was there, but there was almost nothing there. And then I know even recently there was a show that they organized, Nancy, I'm sure, organized for Richard up in Denver. And I went up there to that whole event, which was incredible. But there was one painting in particular that really made an impression on me, and it was an interior of a church, kind of a church apse, and I think that they had borrowed it back from somebody, from a collector, and it just the same thing. It's just like, you know, the appreciation for the drawing it took to do what he did in that painting, how few brush strokes, and how each brushstroke would reveal the drawing, and yet it wasn't tight, and yet it was all there. And that's one thing too about his work always, is that it isn't tight, and yet it is so precise, you know, and so, which always told me how important the drawing was, and how important it was for him to appreciate what he wanted to do before he did it.
Oh, Daniel, you said yes. Thank you. How obedient. Okay, I'm going to bring in Gayatri, because we spoke a lot yesterday. You're painting in a way. So introduce yourself for me, darling. Tell us where you are, and go ahead with your question.
Yeah, this is Gayatri Mehta from Mumbai, India. And yesterday I was there the whole day. And today, right from afternoon, that is 3:30 here, I'm here, and I'm still, it is 3:30 in the morning, and I'm still awake just to enjoy you people, seeing you people enjoying and sharing your experiences about Richard. I have become so close to him, though I never knew him personally. I never heard him say few words, but today I can feel what Richard was through all of you, through all of your sayings, through all of your stories. You have really made him close to all of us through all over the world. Thank you so much that we have come to know Richard in a very, very deeper way, in a very soulful way. We are all indebted to you that, yes, you have shared Richard in a true sense to us. Your paintings are superb. I follow many of you, especially Quang Ho. I can't pronounce his name properly, but all of you, many of you I follow quite regularly, and I love your work. And we get inspired through you. The legacy of Richard will definitely continue. We are hoping forward for more programs like this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bless you.
And I have today made.
Thank you so much.
One
Lovely
painting.
things to say.
I have made one painting I would like to show.
Yeah, please do.
Getting inspired from all of you. One still life setup I have made, and that still life setup I can show you if that can be seen. Can you all see?
That's beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
Where is it?
A little closer.
And this is the painting I have
Oh my
made.
gosh.
Good
Beautiful
job.
composition.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So
Very nice.
I too was quite inspired to paint with you people, and it is indeed a great pleasure to meet you all people in person. And Nancy, we are looking forward. Simi, we are looking forward for more programs like this.
Bless
So
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gayatri.
Gayatri, I just want to also say, can you just tell everybody what you guys do in January every year? I absolutely love that you celebrate.
Yes. Every year, a group of artists, say 25, 30 artists, we gather on 12th of January for last 8 years. We go at some place, we call for a model, and then we make end plein air painting, remembering and celebrating John Singer Sargent.
Wow.
On 12th
Gutry.
January every year.
That's amazing.
Without
Gutry,
saying,
that's my birthday too. I'm January 12th.
oh, then now we'll be celebrating Tina also. But till now
are
we have
amazing.
been celebrating John Singer Sargent. In Mumbai, we go to a place or garden somewhere and we make a point to paint from life and plein air. So I hope we will celebrate Richard Schmid from now onwards
We need to,
in India, and whatever we do, we'll let you know. There
yeah.
are a group of artists
That's
who are really,
fantastic,
really
Gayatri.
followers
Fantastic.
of Richard Schmid.
Bless
So,
you. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining
So
us.
much. Thank you so much.
So, folks, what we would love to do is show us the best view of your painting up close so that we can see it. And then also, if you can just tell us where people can find you after this, not your physical home address.
Kathy Anderson. My website is kathyandersonstudio.com. And I am teaching workshops, of course. I'm so excited to go to Yorkshire next summer with Daniel Keys. My next workshop live actually is at Scottsdale Artist School at the end of January. So, and thank you. All I can say is, like, Richard changed my life 100%. I know I would not be here without falling under his wing. And it's like, this weekend has been so emotional. I feel like I'm going to collapse, but I'll probably just have a drink instead. But it's just been so amazing. And Simi and Joe, no one will ever know what work they have put into this and how amazing they have been. And Nancy, to see this come to life the way you wanted it to, I'm just so, that's all I can say. Thank you so much.
There's a little bit of saturation right now because I still haven't got down to the top of it, trying to cool off some colors. But yeah, we're just really focusing on the drawing, and yeah,
just beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my website is suchitrabhosle.com. And of course on Instagram, I'm as my first and last name. And thank you, really. I mean, for me, this has been such an honor, really, Nancy. I think I was just excited when you touched base and you said, "Would you do this?" And I was just really, really excited to do this.
I have to say, I wouldn't have missed this for the world. When Nancy called and said, "Will you do this? But it's for still life. Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, I wouldn't miss this for the world. And I can prove that because yesterday my son graduated college in New York City and I flew home to be here for this. So I wouldn't miss it for the world. And I am so honored to be a part of your life, Nancy, going forward. I'm so excited to see what you do with your goal and important mission of carrying on Richard's legacy. You are shining in that goal, in that role right now. I'm so incredibly happy for you and proud for you. In 2020, Richard used a butter knife to induct me officially into the Putney Painters, and that was really, truly the highlight of my 10 years. I'll be 10 years in March 2020 that I started oil painting. So I'm going to have to go do the color charts again. But all of the Putney Painters, I love you all so much, and being in touch with you over the pandemic time has saved me. It's kept me from going crazy. It's kept me feeling like this is all going to end someday. And getting to see you in person for the services, Nancy, was an absolute treasure, a gift I'll never forget to be able to be a part of that with you. So thank you so much for including me.
Here's can you see the painting up close a little bit?
We can.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's gorgeous, Quan.
Thank you. It's a little dark, but the scenes over there, and but that's about all I can do with what I could do today. It's interesting. Earlier on, Simi was asking about how many brushes you have in your left hand, non-painting hand, and I usually have a gob too, just like everyone else. Their answer is so funny to me because it was all the same. But today, because I was holding Liam, I had one brush, and it turned out the same.
Oh.
I didn't need all those brushes after all.
Brush sales are going to plummet after you've said that now.
Nancy, I just want to say how honored I am to be part of this. Of course, we all love you, and we all love Richard as much. Well, as much as we love Richard, we love you as well, just as much. And I can't wait to see what you'll do from this point on. And we want you to come paint with us if you can sometime. Come visit us, and because you and I have a lot to talk about on so many spiritual and philosophical things. You know that, right? But anyway, I just want to say I'm so happy to be part of this today. It was so much fun, and to watch and see everybody, what you all did in just a few hours is so amazing. As far as my own work is concerned, I mean, I'm on Instagram as Quang Ho Art or something like that, and I'm on Facebook and I post some stuff. And I don't teach as many workshops anymore, but I do this thing called MFA .studio, and so I do a bunch of videos on there. So he's going crazy. Hang on.
Whilst Quang says that, I just want to say the MFA website that Quang has.
You have to see him. I go over and push the swing, and he looks at me. He starts laughing and smiling, and then I go away, and he's grumping. So crazy. So anyway, what I'm doing with the MFA .studio is I'm inventing a whole curriculum on there, and of course I have a lot of other artists on there contributing. And I feel like what we said earlier, it's like we're all teaching each other, and education doesn't have to be, $70,000 a year in some stupid ass college that teach you nothing. I'm listening to what you all said today, and it's just a few lines, like the design structure, the value design. And if you get that explained to you in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, it will change how you paint. And if you're somebody who can explain it to you, who knows what they're talking about, that's so valuable. And I think for me, as an artist, I've learned from a series of little ahas like that. And after a while, it's all the same ones coming back over and over. And then it's up to you to put it into practice, So I don't feel like there's any secrets anymore, but how much do you want to learn, and who do you go to talk to, and make sure you go to somebody who knows what they're talking about. So that's the whole point of why I'm doing MFA, is I have my perspective on what makes this painting behind me work, but then I can go and do something very graphic and abstract, and I have to be able to explain myself too. So there's a little animal squirming back there. But anyway, so check that out if you want to. It's like I said, it's really cheap anymore it's very affordable to get a good art education, don't you think? I mean, Sherrie and Daniel and all of you have wonderful videos out there that you can learn from. So anyway, applaud to all of you. This is great.
Thank you so much.
You. I guess where to find me, same as all of the others, Instagram and all the Facebook, and my website is danieljkeys.com, and I have a few workshops listed. Of course, Kathy and I are going to Yorkshire allegedly after I think 3 or 4 years of trying to get this all together, but it is settled as far as I know for next year. But that's listed along with some other workshops, and so I hope to see all of you that have been painting today, and catch up soon. I did get to see Quang and Adrian last week in Denver, which was nice. And so I do have also videos on my website, links to downloads and things like that. Thank you, Nancy. What an honor, and I love you very, very much. And I would do anything for you like this again. Just whatever you need. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so this is the painting. I can go in a little bit more and just give you a closer look. But anyway, I have to say it was just, I mean, Simi and Joe, you guys are amazing. And I cannot imagine how you've been pulling this off. But I really, I mean, Nancy, it's been an honor, you know, to have been invited to be a part of this. I think the thing that I'm so amazed by all the artists is the humility. So here you've had like the most incredible lineup of artists. Some of the best artists in the world really have been demonstrating, you know, on your this whole event, and yet each one of them is so humble. I mean, so it's really been an extraordinary experience, and then all of this, you know, to honor Richard, who really was one of the huge talents, I think, in the history of art, and as well as Nancy. And I think that Nancy kind of puts herself on the back burner quite often with Richard, but I have just tremendous respect for you, Nancy, and for your aesthetic also, and for your artistic ideas. So, and all of you, I have to say, I just really am kind of blown away by the talent that has been presented today. So I'm just delighted to be a part of it. And you can find me on the, you know, website Bright Light Fine Art, and we do actually stream David LaFell every Sunday on Facebook, also on Bright Light Fine Art. And Bright Light Fine Art, we have a lot of instructional videos, so that's what we do, is a lot of painting, all kinds of subject matter. And we do have a flower workshop online coming up at the end of the month of October, and you can also find that on Bright Light Fine Art. And our next in-person workshop should be at Scottsdale Artist School, like everybody else is saying, if it goes through, and that's in February. So.
Oh my gosh, yes, just thank you. And it's just so neat for everyone out there who have been painting and need that help. They get to pick who they'd like to study with right now, you know, which is so great. So I'm so glad they know everybody's website. I'm just so honored to all of you. And let me just get into the gallery view. Just honored for all of you. Thank you forever to you know, for doing this. All of you just jumped at it to honor Richard, and so that's just so, you know, it's just so wonderful, because it's just so healing to heal with art and to heal with other people doing art. So thank you so much. And he kind of, you know, I mean, it just deepens him living more into my heart and all these wonderful memories that I can go forward with. So thank you all so much for the whole day, and all of you out there. All right, I have the next two. We have two films coming up, short films, and this again is just Richard's generosity. And I'm going to introduce the first one. Kathy's going to introduce the second. And before I start again, I just want to say thank you to everybody. This has just been such a joy to celebrate this tribute to Richard with every single one of you. Thank you for participating. And all right, so the first film is A Brief History of the Richard Schmid Art Auction. And in 1990, Richard and I decided to move up into the mountains. It was very wild with bears and all sorts of animals in the town of Bellevue, Colorado, on Stove Prairie Road. When Richard found out that our community had an all-volunteer fire department, he wanted to help. We became good friends with West Rutt, one of the Risk Canyon volunteer firefighters, and he put this short film together very quickly for us, telling another story of Richard's generosity just for you. And also, some of the photographs are low DPIs because of the fires out there. A lot of the photographs were burnt in fires, the higher DPIs. So, but it still tells a wonderful story of Richard. Kathy.
And after that, I'm going to introduce actually a very good friend of mine, the former CEO of the Salamagundi Club and the current publisher of Art and Architecture magazine. He's an incredible lover of art ever since I've known him, and has a huge art collection that he just can't stop buying, Mr. Tim Newton, that we all know and love so much.
A brief history of the Richard Schmid Fine Art Auction. Chapter 1, in the beginning. Way back sometime in the 20th century, in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, a group of ranchers and other assorted mountain folk decided to band together and form a volunteer fire department to battle increasing numbers of forest fires. In the early years, it was hard going, since they had decided to avoid government revenuers and rely on community donations in order to operate. So they did things like convert a World War II bomb tender into a water tanker, beg for hand-me-down gear from other fire departments, and hope for tame fire seasons. Chapter 2. A white knight arrives. As the years went by, the mountain population grew and changed. In the early 90s, the internationally known artist and author Richard Schmid rode into town, brimming with energy, enthusiasm, and fresh ideas. When Richard realized that the only organization immediately available to protect his family and property from wildfire still relied on second-hand, often out-of-date equipment, he thought it the perfect time to experiment with a long-held philosophy that art could be used to do more than just beautify a community. His first effort was to help organize a fundraiser in the form of a raffle. He donated a print of one of his paintings, browbeat a couple of other artists to do the same, and he even offered to help us sell the raffle tickets. Since we live in one of the most scenic areas in the West, and arguably the world, we get a number of tourists traveling through during the summer. Many are already lost by the time they travel along the miles of winding road necessary to reach us, and they often stop locals and ask for directions. So we decided to sell our raffle tickets at the intersection of two dirt roads where an historic little mountain school had been in operation for over a century. Every weekend throughout the summer of 1995, Richard and a number of volunteers would ensconce themselves under a tree at that intersection, run into the road to stop every vehicle that drove by, and make our pitch to buy a raffle ticket in order to help us protect our beautiful surroundings from the ravages of wildfire. At first, we were wildly successful. We sold tickets to tourists from Japan to Germany, and were excited to meet folks from all over the world while standing in our own backyard. Chapter 3. Richard meets the sheriff. One day in August, when our dwindling cadre of sunburnt and dusty volunteers was beginning to rationalize that a well-equipped fire department was perhaps an elitist notion that shouldn't be so high on our list of priorities, the sheriff pulled up, and he wasn't looking for a raffle ticket. He told us that he was sympathetic to our cause, but our neighbors were beginning to think of us more as an irritating public nuisance than a beneficial public service. He strongly suggested that we find another way to raise funds. Of course, we all agreed. Chapter 4. Was it heat stroke? Not one to let a little threat of incarceration dampen his enthusiasm for a worthy cause, Richard then suggested that we simply move our efforts to a mountain meadow beside the road and have an art auction instead of a raffle. I am chagrined to report that most of us at first thought that Richard's time out in the sun might have caused some permanent damage. After all, we lived in a community better known for cattle ranching than art collecting. The nearest town was miles away, and in 1995, the full potential of the internet was well beyond our wildest dreams. However, Richard Schmid is a very persuasive guy. So, Chapter 5, our really, really humble beginnings. In 1996, we hosted our first Richard Schmid fine art auction. It was held in a hayfield. The art was hung in an old surplus army tent. Richard personally invited and may have even begged some artists to participate. To top it off, Richard sold his own painting by standing in the bed of a pickup truck in order to get reception on his cell phone. Having said all that, we raised more money for our volunteer fire department that year than in any of the previous 20 years of our existence. Every year since that time, we learned a little more and became a little more successful. Although Richard and his wife Nancy Guzik moved out of the area some years later, they both contributed enthusiastically to support our auction every year. Since its humble beginnings in 1996, over 1,250 pieces of fine original art have been auctioned for a total of $1.7 million, generating over $650,000 to support our volunteer mountain fire department. We thank the many artists who have contributed to our efforts over the years. We thank the many patrons who have joined us on Sunday of Labor Day weekend and purchased art. And most of all, we thank our internationally known artist, author, neighbor, friend, and fundraising visionary, Richard Schmid.
Hi, I'm Tim Newton. It's an honor for me to be with you today to share in the celebration of the life and legacy of our friend Richard Schmid. I first met Richard and Nancy in the spring of 2009, and they came down from New England to New York City to look at the American Masters show at the Salmagundi Club on Fifth Avenue. After meeting them, I had the opportunity to ask if they would consider being a part of that show, and both Richard and Nancy said yes. A couple of years later, I asked Richard if he would have an exhibition of his drawings up in the Patrons Gallery. That would be a show that was concurrent with American Masters, so that people that came to Masters could also see the Richard Schmid show. And he provided us with 18 or 20 drawings that were spectacular that were up in the Patrons Gallery, and we sold several of those. After that show came down, it was a couple of months, and Richard hadn't been able to get back to New York to pick up the drawings. And so I proposed, I said, Richard, you know, how about if I just put them in my minivan and drive them up to New Hampshire? And he said, well, that would be great. In fact, he proposed, he said, you know, if you do that, then if you have time, I would like you to set for me, you know, those little head studies that I do. And there you go. He said, I'll do one of you and give that to you as a thank you. Well, no thanks was needed, but I couldn't turn that down. So I sat with Richard for 3 of the best hours of my life. And he did the painting and we talked. And it was just Richard and I. And we talked about many things. And one of the things he said to me, so Tim, how are things at Salmagundi? Now, I was chairman of the board at the club at the time. And I said, well, we're very tight financially. And he said, well, he talked a bit. He said, let's show them the power of art to raise money. He said, I'll come to the club. I'll do a demonstration. I'll, you know, give all the money from the ticket sales and all the money from the sale of the demo painting to the club. Well, subsequent to that, all in, the total amount was probably $45,000 that he gifted to the club for our general fund. Now, that's just one of the many stories that you'll probably hear today, his generosity with the Wrist Canyon Fire Department auction, all of the things that Richard did. He was a man of great generosity, a brilliant man of great integrity, and we at Salmagundi were the absolute beneficiaries of his generosity. I'm honored to say that my friendship with Richard has continued until the time of his passing, and he is one of the greatest artists that most all of us will ever know in our lives, and we're blessed by him. And it's great to have this day to raise a glass to him, to celebrate the life that he led and the example that he gave. Thank you very much for letting me share my story, one of my Richard Schmid stories, with you today. God bless you all.
Thank you both to the Risk Canyon Fire Department and Wesrup for the first video there. And secondly, to our friend Tim Newton for sharing your story with us today. As Tim mentioned, I think now is a good time for us to raise a glass or your brushes, and we'll do a 3 cheers to Richard. Is everybody ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Cheers, Richard. Now I'd like to introduce Betty Sue, who's going to perform a live tribute for Richard. Betty Sue is a musician based in Austin, Texas. She met Nancy and Richard through her beloved, the painter Charlie Hunter, who was on broadcast with us earlier as a member of the Putney Painters group. In more normal times, Betty Sue is primarily a full-time musician, but during this strange time, like so many musicians, she has pivoted to focusing on live streaming concerts and recording sessions of work from her home studio. She was commissioned to write a song for Nancy by the Putney Painters, which inspired by her paintings and her upcoming book, Where Fairy Tales Come Alive. And Nancy and Richard then asked Betty Sue to write this song in celebration of Richard's upcoming book.
Well, it's such a pleasure to be here, and I just really enjoyed tuning in today and having this broadcast on and watching everybody paint and talk about their process. It's been really a very moving celebration. In preparation for this, I dove into Alla Prima, and also, even though I'm not really a painter, and a bunch of interviews that Richard gave over the years in order to write this song for him.
I came up learning in Chicago, consumed by the mystery of being alive and awake to the magic of showing you what I see. The hardest part, it's always the start when I don't know what the end will be. I want to see the wind before I begin to play chess with the canvas before me. I was made to tell a story this way. I know I'll write 1,000 words, tell you what my eyes heard, with a paintbrush in my hand. And it's easy, makes you crazy when I say just copy one piece and then another. Fit the big shapes together one by one, but never lose sight of the wonder that I was made to tell a story this way. I know you'll understand. I'll write 1,000 words, tell you what my eyes heard, with a paintbrush in my hand, and you'll come to learn who I am on this blanket of clean white lead. See the love spilled out, pulled brave across the surface when my heart pumps bright cat red. And I was made to tell a story this way. I know you'll understand. I'll write 1,000 words, tell you what my eyes heard, with a paintbrush in my hand.
Richard and for Nancy. Thanks for running this, Simi. You've done a phenomenal job. I just have to say, I know that it has been probably a gazillion hours of work for you to pull this together technically and to get all of us artistic types. It's worse than wrangling cats, I have to say. And
You know,
you've really done an incredible job.
You'd think I'd be used to it in the business I'm in, but every time I'm still shocked. But Betty Sue, that was just absolutely beautiful. And I know everybody that watched that will just be blown away. So thank you. I'm gonna pop you back up there now. Oh, okay. Thank you, Betty Sue, for such a beautiful tribute. We're now towards the closing of our celebration of Richard. And just so everybody knows, we have recorded all of yesterday and today's events. Just give me 10 seconds. We're going to post them on the website, richardschmidart.com, by the end of October. That goes the same for all of the artists who've painted in today's paintings, okay? We're now going to share the final video with you by our dear friend Kristen. Kristen is the owner of the West Wind Fine Art Gallery and has represented the art of Richard Schmid and Nancy for more than 20 years. She became their lifelong friend and worked with them in many capacities. Kristen is here now to introduce the film Abbotsford House, the creation of a masterwork by Richard Schmid.
Hello, friends. Richard Schmid was also my dear friend and mentor for over 20 years, and I produced this short film, Abbotsford House, the creation of a masterwork, as a gift to Richard. I believed it was important to record the historic event, Richard's presentation of his journey to Scotland to paint the ancestral home of Sir Walter Scott. It took Richard nearly 2 years to paint his masterpiece, and then he asked me to be his emissary to present it to Queen Elizabeth II at the royal opening on June 10, 2013. His masterpiece can be seen in Abbotsford's Visitor Centre in Melrose, Scotland. I hope you enjoy our film in honor of Richard.
If we stubbornly pursue excellence in our perceptions and skills, we can offer paintings that will be true in ever new ways. We will do well to take a lesson from Mozart and Bach and others and create things so compellingly beautiful that we can't imagine a world without them. Was my first view of Abbotsford. You can imagine not having ever seen Abbotsford and then suddenly coming upon this beautiful, beautiful, otherworldly view of a fairy castle. This is the richness of Sir Walter's mind, that he would conceive of such a place. Just beginning the first of 2 sketches from life. In total, I think I worked out there for 5 full days of painting. That's me in my studio. The sketch that I did outdoors is over my left shoulder, using that as a reference for the color. The thing is, in painting it, I didn't want it to look like an architectural rendering, like an architect would show you. I wanted it to look like a serious painting that had interesting romantic edges and color changes and so on. And so I had to continually keep that vision of what I wanted this painting to look like as I went along. I wanted the painting to look like I just did it like that. You know, that it just happened without all of this hard work. I was enjoying the fascination of problem solving rather than looking at problems as something to have to endure. That's my vision of Abbotsford. Thank you.